I would like to welcome you to today's Alliance of Women Coaches webinar, Conflict, Chaos, and Cliques, using DISC in the stages of team development to navigate a successful season, as presented by Bo Hanson. Bo is a 4-time Olympian, a WCA presenter, and an internationally respected coaching consultant. He works with coaches, athletes, and sports professionals around the world. I've been working with Bo and DISC for over 5 years with my own team, and I found that Bo's ideas, his insights, and his tools to be a crucial element for our team's motivation, communication, team building, and success.
Perfect. Thank you, Holly. And it's great to be with everyone today. I do see a couple of familiar names on that list, and you people know who you are, so a special hi to you. I assume everyone can understand my Australian accent all right. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to type those questions, and we can deal with them as they come up. Plus, at the end of the webinar, I thought we'd also leave some time to chat about any questions that you may have also. All right, so we're going to start this by just considering what a successful season may actually begin like, more to the point. And in the title, it's talking about conflict, cliques, and chaos. And one thing we know for sure is that there are a few coaches that are immune to at least having a few issues or dramas as they progress through any season. So this is quite common, but what we want to ensure that we do is to give ourselves the best opportunity of starting our season on the right foot. And there was a well-known American management specialist. His name was William Edward Deming, and he was largely responsible for a lot of the work which was done in Japanese automakers, and was responsible for ensuring that the Japanese auto industry became an industry which was renowned for high quality products. And there was a phrase which he used, and after many studies which he had done, which statistically suggested that the first 15% of any process is the most critical if you are to achieve the last remaining 85%. And when he spoke about that first 15%, what he was actually referring to was the degree to which you follow a quality process in establishing a solid foundation. And if you are able to establish a solid foundation, then you have a much higher likelihood of ensuring that the remaining 85% of your project or process or outcome goals are going to be achieved. And so today we're looking at establishing a solid foundation, and we're going to be using 3 tools for that. And if I flick the slide over now, you'll see those 3 tools, and you'll see the analogy there that we're making with a house, for example, and any house has to have a solid foundation, of course. The 3 tools we're going to be using are what we call the stages of team development. You'll also see the DISC model, and we're also going to be referring to a process which we call the GRIP model. Now, with a lot of the work that we do with most of the teams we are a part of, many times we see coaches begin their season without having fully established a quality foundation. And from my perspective, there are a few models which we as coaches really need to understand well, and these 3 models are amongst it. If I was to add another model there are a couple of interesting models on how athletes learn as well, which I think is a very important model to understand. But today we're looking at these 3 models, and I thought we'd begin by looking at the stages of team development, because when we talk about conflict, we talk about chaos, and we talk about athletes developing these cliques that they may establish as they progress through the season. What we often find is that these 3 phenomena often occur during the very beginning stages of a season. And so if we understand how teams actually develop, we're in a better position to make sure that we take the correct action at the appropriate stage. And of course, there are also some problems that we should just not be having if we have established those foundations effectively. So I'm trusting that all makes sense. If it doesn't, just let me know and I'll re-explain a couple of things. But this model that you're seeing here is a model which was developed in 1965 by a man called Bruce Tuckman. And it was the study of many teams, and teams both within the context of business and within universities, etc. And they found that when teams went through a stage of first coming together, that before they reached the stage of performing, there were other incremental steps of progress which they basically went through. And what we also know is that to have a team perform at its absolute best, it's not a rite of passage. And when I talk to a lot of coaches think that if their team is together for a certain amount of time, that they will naturally go through these various stages and finally end up at a stage where the team is actually performing successfully. Well, it just doesn't happen. And when we talk about that, we're really referring to the fact that, if we're not proactive about navigating our way through each of these stages, then we simply can't expect that our team, which is this diverse group of people, are going to end up in a position where they're actually doing a great job. And so I wanted to just quickly cover off on these stages and mainly come back to two of the stages, because this is where we're going to get most of the issues that we experience. So the first stage here is that forming stage. And essentially the forming stage is when a team is new to you. And essentially, and all of you as coaches would have noticed this, that when your team first comes together at the pre-season, people are enthusiastic, they're happy to be there. The athletes are generally on their best behaviour. Now, if we link this quickly to DISC, we already have expressions for this. We'll suggest that everyone basically are on their best behaviour. It's sort of like a dating period before you get to know someone really well. And essentially people are very adaptable. Now what that means is obviously we all have our preferred DISC styles that we bring to our respective teams, but when we first come together, because people are being courteous to each other, they're being well mannered, they're basically not showing their true colours. And because of that, they're making allowances for each other, they're enabling people to basically say what they want to say, and people aren't being corrected on those type of things. People aren't being challenged in the way that a high-performing team would challenge its team members. And so what ends up happening is that at this stage, if we as coaches don't take time to establish this foundation at its earliest point, what will often happen is that the members of the team who do show some natural leadership ability can start to take the team in a direction that perhaps we don't want it to go. And sometimes that direction may work out the way we want, but a lot of the times it won't. And what we're suggesting at this stage is because there is little agreement on team goals, the team rules haven't been established, the processes that we need to follow in terms of how we're going to structure ourselves as a team, these are the key things that we need to be doing. Now the next stage is where we go through that storming stage, and this is where we're finding that you're going to get a lot of conflict. You're going to essentially have an element of chaos at this particular point in time, and certainly in terms of the cliques and how people bond together and dissociate from other members of the team, this is the stage where it's quite likely to happen. And what's actually useful to realize is that this is actually a normal stage, and more to the point, what it actually means is that your team has made progress. And the reason that's the case is because suddenly we are in conflict because people are starting to show their true colours. Now this is going to happen even if you take the time to establish those clear boundaries, if you take the time to establish your team goals, if you take the time to establish your values and behaviours and how you want your team to conduct itself. And we're going to cover those elements off when we look at the grip model a little bit later on in the presentation. But the storming stage is a natural stage. Now, one of the issues is that some coaches, naturally through our own respective DISC profiles, some coaches are a little bit conflict averse. And if you're a conflict averse style of coach, and that's one of the more relationship orientated styles, such as an I or an S, there is a possibility that if you're not aware of your team going through the storming stage and how important it can be for the team to sort itself out, what can happen is that I've seen coaches that are conflict averse, they'll say, look, we're supposed to be on the same team here and we're supposed to have the same goals, and basically what we're looking to do as a group is move forward as a team. And they can often push the conflict aside, or at least brush it back under the carpet and pretend that it's not existing. But the reality is that it's going to be there, and unless we deal with the conflict at this stage, then it's simply not going to go away. And whilst it may appear that if we push it aside, the team can move forward to a degree, but what will happen is that conflict will re-emerge at a more critical point of your season. And so in a perfect world, if you think about your pre-season, we're aiming to have the storming stage well and truly taken care of by the time we start competing. And if we can organise for that to happen, that's a great thing, but obviously it means that we need to have enough time to have progressed through it. Some of the typical issues people have when they get into that storming stage is literally where people, from the perspective of their disc profile, they are literally going to start showing their true colours. Okay?